Hello! I hope you're doing well today. I am very excited, as you frequently find me, because I love cooking and I love food. I love the smell of food. I love the taste of food. So today we are working from the How Not to Die Cookbook. This is a whole plant-based cookbook. And we are making the whole wheat pasta with lentil bolognese, which here is the photo. So what we're basically doing is creating a no-meat sauce that has that texture that is satisfying enough to work like meat but not meat at all, right? And the lentils give you lots and lots of protein. So actually already on the stove, I have lentils boiling because they're meant to be pre-cooked when they go into the sauce. I'm making a double batch, so ultimately there'll be 3 cups of cooked lentils. So I've put in 3 full cups of dried. That's going to make way more than 3 cooked, with 7 cups of water and some salt. And the rest of it is ready to go here. So the other thing that I've got going ahead of time is I've put the juice from the diced tomatoes into the pot, and you could use a regular like stovetop kind of big basin. I'm using a Dutch oven here. Both are fine, totally acceptable. And that's kind of a creative little thing that Dr. Grieger is doing, utilizing the juice to steam and flavor the onion and garlic at the same time. So I have 1 large onion, which my method for that is to cut it in half, giving me a nice flat surface. And then I go ahead and I make the long slits. And this is this knife where like all the food sticks to it, so I kind of have to hold the pieces down. I do a quarter turn, and then I create the smaller slits so that what I've got is a diced onion when I'm done. Super tiny, super small. So that goes in, and it doesn't take much time at all, happily, so fast. Sometimes I've done onion prep, and I'm thankful I'm not with you because I'll be crying my eyes out. Yesterday I did 3 onions, and for whatever reason they were just so potent. So I was crying my eyes out. So thankfully this one is not killing me. Also recently I did a Mexican chopped salad with fresh pearl onions, and I cut up a bunch of those, and oh my gosh, I was crying, the eyeliner was running, I needed tissues, it was a mess. So those go right in. And they can start to heat up and saute. And then the recipe calls for 3 cloves for a single batch. I'm always making a double batch. So 6 cloves, and then I had like 2 little cloves left over, and there was no way that I was going to just hold on to those 2 cloves. So in order to get these out of their skin, I've pre-peeled them so that we don't have so much trash in our picture. But you just take the clove, you take the flat end of your knife, you press down, and it pushes the skin off. So then you just easily rip the skin. And I could use my garlic press, but I'm feeling like I've got some time today, so I'm just going to go ahead and chop my garlic. So all I'm doing is using a rocking motion, going one way with the garlic, going through as many of them as I possibly can. And then once they've all been chopped, I'm going to rotate them and go another way. Take it off my knife. Woo, there the eyes start to burn. I kind of think garlic burns just as much as onion sometimes. Or maybe like the onion juice is still affecting me because they always come in short order to one another, right? It's like a little bit of onion, a little bit of garlic. That's often the case. So when you're mincing it by hand, you do want to get it fairly small. And eventually I come to the point where I've done a reasonable job of getting it all. And so then you're just occasionally gathering it back together. You can stick your hand on top and just rock away. Rock, rock, rock-a-doo-wop, ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. I don't know what I'm doing, just messing around. So that gives you your minced garlic, which can go right in, flavors the sauce really nice. I cook so much with garlic, I actually don't even really taste it anymore. It's funny because my husband will say, that fresh garlic, and it's like, oh yeah, like it's as if that's just what food tastes like to me. I don't even register it most of the time, sometimes. So there's your garlic, and I'm just going to give that a quick stir in the pan so that it all is cooking uniformly. And while that's doing its thing, I'm going to chop up my mushroom. So I should tell you, this recipe calls for crimini mushrooms, 8 ounces in a batch. I'm just using a regular baby Bella, except for these are like Costco baby Bellas, so they're kind of like teenager, young adult Bellas, whatever. So the size of the mushroom very much depends. Sometimes I might only slice it one way. Of course, we're also simulating the idea of ground beef. Mushrooms have kind of a hearty texture to them. They also release a lot of moisture. So if you're concerned that maybe you didn't have enough moisture in these plant-based ways that you steam foods or whatever, suddenly those mushrooms open up a ton of extra moisture. So you kind of want to be aware of that if it matters. These Costco containers of mushrooms, they're sold in like a 24-ounce package. I used some at Thanksgiving, and it's actually a full week now after Thanksgiving. So I'm really thankful these mushrooms are still in good shape, that I can still use them. Because, you know, I think sometimes you think, oh, it's Thanksgiving, I'll need celery and mushrooms and onion, and like then the amount that it actually calls for is maybe not what you anticipated, and you've got all this extra. Now, on the other hand, I make a fresh cranberry sauce every year. Oh my gosh. So the back of any cranberry package will tell you a cup of water, a cup of sugar. I substitute orange juice for the water. I got that idea from somewhere else. It wasn't mine. But it is amazing. And I know there are some people that say like, oh, cranberry sauce doesn't need that much sugar, so they might cut back on the sugar. I leave it because it's Thanksgiving, and I think Thanksgiving should be a treat. And so do what you will. But that, I bought a 3-pound bag of cranberries from Costco. And at first I thought maybe it's too much to make the whole thing. Nope, we totally finished it because it's so tasty. And our kids don't even, because we rotisserie our turkey, so it's pretty juicy already. It's not like it really needs gravy or any of that. And so people really just eat it as a side dish in our house. But we let the berries burst and I kind of squish them against the sides. And it's just so much fun. That's a total aside while we're sitting here cutting mushrooms. So back to the crimini, crimini, I've bought them in the past. Same with like shiitake. My family just tends to not get that excited about all of the exotic mushrooms, and it's not worth the fight. So we tend to just buy the Bellas when they're available, and if the store's out of Bellas, buy the button, right, the white mushrooms. But if you are adventurous, actually when we do hot pot, we get the straw mushrooms, sometimes called enoki, E-N-O-K-I, from the Asian market. They're like long white with a little head on top. And then sometimes you can find trumpet mushrooms in the Asian market too, which are really good. But again, in general, it wasn't worth it. Our kids would often notice. And the shiitake and the crimini are hard to find in a basic grocery store. You have to go to one of the more fancy grocery stores, which I just don't do. So usually it's the baby Bellas, and I'm fine with that. I feel like I'm living a good life, right? But when you see those different kinds of mushrooms, I bring it up because sometimes people just don't feel the freedom to adapt the recipe, and I do. And I think, again, my life isn't any less happy because I'm adapting recipes to make them work for me. Similarly, later on in this recipe, it calls for a teaspoon of date sugar. I just used the regular sugar that we have on hand because it's just easier than having all those different sugars on hand. But, you know, maybe someday I'll feel like, yeah, we're in a space where we could switch over and we could just have date sugar on hand. It's less sweet, so it's kind of a natural sweetener, right? Like fruit is a natural sweetener, and dates are so sweet. We got some from Equal Exchange, these Palestinian, and I don't really care. Like my husband will buy dry dates in the, he'll buy them in bulk. And I won't have anything to do with them. My oldest daughter will. But these that we got from Equal Exchange, they're fresh for one, and they have a little plastic kind of sealing over the top, and you break the seal and you go for it. And they were like eating caramel. So honestly, dates are pretty sweet, and they would absolutely work as a realistic sweetener. You know, do what you want. Do what you can afford. Do what makes sense for your family. Because all these books, they do tend to have their thing and their way that they're making life a little harder. But I think the upside is, for instance, when I found out that I needed to be gluten-free and I started using the Against All Grain book. The great thing about that book was she was streamlining the amount of ingredients that she needed to use, right? And so I used that Against All Grain book religiously. And, you know, I've now got my favorites from the book, and I use it less. But I needed that. We were in this situation where we had black bean flour, potato starch, sorghum flour, brown rice flour, sweet rice flour, regular rice flour. It was ridiculous. There's flour everywhere. Whereas like a second before that, I was using all-purpose flour, right? Which it just turns out isn't good for my body. So those mushrooms are releasing their juices. My onions are translucent. The garlic I don't even worry about, right? They do their thing pretty easily. So this is coming along well. And my lentils are bulking up as well. Look at all my paper over there. Ridiculous. So we're pretty good. Once you get to this point, it moves very, very quickly. So that mushroom goes in. We're going to stir in our tomato paste, which is going to be a half cup because I'm doing a double batch. 2 tablespoons of miso with that double batch. Nutritional yeast. So I have 4 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. 3 teaspoons of basil. 2 teaspoons of oregano. 2 teaspoons of sugar. Nope. 1 teaspoon of sugar. And I'm not using the red pepper flakes because our kids complain. So, this only goes in, and I'll show it to you. So I've just got my half cup with my miso on top. I've got a snowman of food. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to show it to you. Stick that in the pot, and then I kind of smush it and push it in. Because tomato sauce is really thick, tomato paste, as is miso. And once you start adding your other liquids, it gets increasingly difficult to break that up. So what I have found is just smushing it against the bottom of the pan and into other things ahead of time makes that break up a lot faster, and then I don't have any issues later on. It's very easy from that point. So, and by the way, the smell of lentils makes me so happy. So then from there, I've got all those dried ingredients and spices, the nutritional yeast, the oregano, the basil, the sugar. You can just stick it right in. It's getting a moment to meld in before you add in the rest of your tomatoes and a little bit extra liquid. And you can hear it, like, or at least I can hear it. You probably can't. It's starting to sear on the bottom so that tomato paste has absorbed the liquid. It's going to give it a rich tomato flavor versus just throwing in a sauce quick. It's going to make it a little thicker too so that it adheres well to the pasta. Which, by the way, like, I'll make that pasta later on today, probably while the kids are doing homework. And so this sauce will just be reheatable. Pasta's pretty easy to throw together. So you can make this sauce the night before or even a couple days before if you wanted to, and then be ready to go. Okay, so once that's done, we're going to get 2 cups of water. Which is going to let some of that tomato paste break up even more. Essentially, you're kind of like reconstituting it. Essentially, you're kind of reconstituting your sauce. And it's not particularly red, right? Because your mushrooms had a color to them. And then now that that's done, it's actually a ton. It's 2 28 ounces or in this case, 4 14 ounces of tomato that goes right in. It's going to make it nice and chunky. I think this is such a satisfying sauce. I absolutely love it because it really does have a good texture to it. Actually, an even more satisfying texture than if you just do hamburger, because the bean and the mushroom add so much. And then you can top it with this nutty parm, which is an add-on type recipe he has at the beginning of the book, which includes nutritional yeast with some ground up Brazil nuts and other types of nuts. So you get kind of a cheesy, nutty texture. And then what I'm going to do in order to get the lentils that I need is I'm just going to use this cup. Now, if I would have been thinking, I would have probably cooked my lentils ahead of time, but they're totally soft. They're light in color. The skin is falling off. So they're ready to go. There's a little extra water because of how I'm pulling it out, but I'm okay with that. And then my extras I'll just keep on hand for something else. You can also buy canned lentils. It's probably a little more money to do it that way. But so my lentils are in. And this is one of those things, like, I wouldn't over add the lentils even though I have extra, because lentils are just so powerful. So I would leave it at the what he's suggesting for the actual recipe, which is 1.5 cups or 1 can of lentils. So what happens here is once you've got all that, this will simmer for 15 minutes just to let the flavors blend. And if it was a little thick, you could add water. Mine is not going to be, but your lentils are going to continue to create a little bit of thickness as it blends, as well as that tomato paste is going to keep doing it. And you see once you added the tomatoes, it got a little more red, but it's such a beautiful sauce, super flavorful. Notably, he does not add salt. So actually, I'll probably add a teaspoon of salt to this because it will enhance the flavor. That'll help my family feel a little bit more like they're eating something that they understand. But honestly, his nutty parm, if you don't want to add the salt, actually maybe I'll do less. Maybe I'll do 3/4 teaspoons of salt because the nutty parm is going to help. But if you have a kid in your family, or if you yourself are lactose intolerant, the nutty parm is such a great thing because, even what you start to realize with stuff like that is a little bit of topping of cheese all the time can really affect the digestive tract if you're sensitive to it. And so we have our little one, she was just having digestive issues all the time, even with the Lactaid chewables that they could take. This way, all of that has disappeared because we have these things on hand. If it calls for Parmesan, I just pull out that nutty parm and I don't worry about it. The same is true if it calls for sour cream. I now know how to make a tofu sour cream. So finding those little replacements, finding a way that you like it. I tried 3 different recipes before I found the tofu sour cream that I personally liked, which I think comes from the Forks Over Knives cookbook. So you kind of got to play around, find what works for you. But that is the lentil bolognese sauce. So yummy. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.